Hi, I'm Mandi Lockley from the Academy of Astrology. I hope you enjoyed the videos that we've posted very recently over the last few weeks on the Ascendant from Rod and from Sue, describing the Ascendant and what it is in astrology, and also Marcus's view of the traditional qualities of the signs as they pertain to the Ascendant. Now I'm going to talk about the thing that is the opposite of the Ascendant, which is the Descendant, which is often abbreviated to the DC. So I might say Descendant or DC during this talk, it's the same thing. Now the DC marks the start of the 7th house in the horoscope, whereas the Ascendant marks the start of the 1st house. Together, the Ascendant and the DC form what's called an axis. The sign on the Descendant is always the opposite sign to the Descendant. So if you've got Leo rising, you'll have Aquarius on the Descendant, for example. If you've got Aries rising, you'll have Libra on the Descendant. In the example that I prepared, Sagittarius is the Ascendant sign. So Gemini, its opposite sign, is on the Descendant. And the Descendant sign is always at the same degree as the Ascendant. So, in the example, with the Ascendant at 5 degrees 9 minutes of Sagittarius, don't worry about those numbers, it's all mathematical, but just to show you that if it's at 5 degrees of Sagittarius on the Ascendant, the Descendant will be 5 degrees and 9 minutes of Gemini, always. What does it mean? Well, together, as I said, the Ascendant and the Descendant are known as the relationship axis. Whilst the Ascendant, as we've heard, shows how we go out into the world, how we project our ego and assert our will, the Descendant, and the 7th house of which it marks the start, is how we are received by others, how we relate to others and how we cooperate. It's who and what we attract, who and what is attracted to us. It describes significant life partners, including marriage partners. It's how we approach relationships. It's also partnerships in general, for example, our business relationships, our business partnerships. It's what we like and value in other people. For example, it could be as general as who we choose as friends and who we choose as allies. It's also how we are received by others, including the public at large. If you have, we all have our own public persona, some bigger than others, so how we're received by others in public. It describes how we cooperate with others. And how much we tend to compromise is shown by the Descendant and the 7th house, and how much we assert our own will is described by the Ascendant and the 1st house. So the two signs across the axis will show us where we need to find the balance depending on the signs. It's also what others project onto us. It's also what we project onto other people. For example, the parts of ourselves that we might disown or give away. For example, what we live out through others rather than expressing for ourselves. Some of us might marry someone that represents the sign on our ascendants. For example, in our example Gemini, someone might marry a journalist or someone that works in the travel industry, for example. But psychologically, the Descendant invites us to express what it signifies, and we learn that generally through our relationships with other people. Actually, the Descendant can also signify quarrels and relationship breakdowns. That's when cooperation goes wrong or isn't attempted. Even those who we might take to court or vice versa, which is why sometimes we can look at the Descendant when there's a divorce hearing, for example. Therefore, the Descendant is also traditionally known as where we can see our open enemies. These are people we dislike openly and vice versa. So that's a brief overview. So how do we interpret the Descendant? Very quickly, looking at our example, can be quite complicated when you have to look at the whole chart. I think we've mentioned that you need to look at the whole chart to get the whole picture. But this is a brief introduction of how to approach the Descendant and get some idea of what it means. So in our example, we've got Gemini and the Descendant. Therefore, we can say that this person's relationships have the signature of Gemini. So then we can ask, what do we know about Gemini? Well, a few keywords. Gemini's curious, lively, restless, might be easily bored, needs mental and physical stimulation, is changeable, flexible, can be fickle, can take on too much, can be shallow, is generally youthful, enthusiastic, chatty, witty and mischievous. So you can see there's a balance. Some things are good, some things are not so good, which all come under the theme of Gemini and what Gemini describes the sign of Gemini, for example. And this Gemini signature can apply to both the way the person behaves in relationships or the type of person they attract, as I've already mentioned briefly. So they may attract someone with Gemini traits, which could be, as I said, the best or the worst traits of Gemini, Or, as I said, have a relationship with someone who's in a Gemini type profession. Perhaps it might be that the person wanted to follow that profession for themselves, but they didn't, so they married it instead, or they got into a relationship with it itself. I mean, Gemini professions could be journalism, marketing, PR, travel industry, etc. And that's an example where the descendant can show how an aspect of ourselves is given away and expressed through the partner rather than expressed individually. If we want to go a little bit further, we can look at the planet that rules the descendant. Each sign has a planet that it has most affinity with. It's called its ruler. So in the example, Gemini is on the descendant, so the ruler of Gemini is Mercury. It's always Mercury. So Mercury in this chart is in the second house in Capricorn. So we can say that the person who has this chart is looking for someone or attracts someone with Gemini traits but flavoured with Capricorn traits. So the lively mind and the wit and curiosity of Gemini becomes more serious-minded. The intelligence needs to strive towards tangible goals, someone who takes their responsibilities seriously. Value is placed on serious relationships, we could say, because the second house, where the ruler, Mercury, is placed, is about our personal values. And also the descendant ruler in the second house suggests the person needs a partner who shares the same values as them. And Capricorn on the second house cusp suggests security is one of the things that's valued. This might also describe a partner who is reserved or an authoritarian figure, attraction to a father figure type, but also, don't forget, one who has the Gemini traits. And Gemini is youthful in spirit, so it might be someone who's a bit older with authority but also playful, mischievous and young at heart. What else do we look for? Well, one of the other things we look for is planets in the 7th house or very close to the descendant line. Now, students are often concerned if they don't have a planet there or in the 7th house, they won't have a relationship. Now, there's nothing to worry about. It does give us a different flavour if we do have it there, and we can look at that. So in this chart, this example, we have Moon in Gemini in the 7th house. Now, Moon in Gemini feels nurtured by variety, mental stimulation, feels at home in environments where there is learning, talking, reading, absorbing information. Often it's restless. Those in Moon in Gemini are restless, and they like to talk out their emotions. Those are a few ideas about what Moon in Gemini might mean. So, in summary, our chart has Gemini and the descendant ruler Mercury in Capricorn in the 2nd house, and the Moon in Gemini in the 7th house. So then we can put all these different elements together. So we can say, for example, that this chart suggests that whoever this chart belongs to is attracted to or attracts a partner, say, who is curious, lively, flexible, youthful and communicative, perhaps a little mischievous, but someone who takes life and its responsibilities seriously and values security. Perhaps they will build a home together that's full of books and conversation, reflected by the Moon in Gemini. Say, for example, a need for a long-term relationship is indicated. They just need to make sure they have enough mental and physical stimulation so they don't get bored. It's a couple perhaps who might thrive on communicating, but may fall into quarrelling if one partner asserts authority over the other. But when conflict arises, solutions can be found by talking out of their problems. This is a very simple explanation. Obviously, we'd look at the whole chart, there'd be plenty of other factors, but just a little start in trying to sort of interpret what the sign on the descendant might mean. That's it. Brief overview. I hope that was of interest. Please do have a look at the details at the bottom of this video for our website, our Facebook page, and do get in touch. You can subscribe and you can get in touch with us by email. Say all the contact details are below. If you're interested in studying with us, we have courses starting early next year in January. Thank you.